You ain't fat. You ain't fat. You ain't.
That guy in a little coat.
Fuck thinking we need to act.
Good night, girl. I'll see you tomorrow.
Whew. Hey, you. Have you ever laughed at a fat person falling over online? Or maybe you've laughed at the occasional "I'm not fat, I'm fluffy" joke. Well, you're a part of the problem. Did you know that? You're a part of the goddamn problem. What I'm alluding to is that fat people usually have their own subsection of humor when it comes to comedy. There's just a different caliber of humor when you're a fat person, and you usually rely heavily on that with your comedy. So it makes you seem funnier until you lose the weight. Today I want to talk about the fat guy curse, something that everyone I feel like has known about, but no one's really talked about because it seems like a taboo. Now, if you don't know what I'm talking about, and maybe you don't, what I'm referring to is that the fact that when a fat person loses the weight, they usually become less funny as a result. This has happened to a lot of different people I feel like in the industry, from Jonah Hill to people like twomad or Greek God X online. And I want to talk about why that is. Why exactly do these people go from being funny to just this? But before we get into that, I want you to subscribe to the channel. You see, we're about 700 subscribers away from getting to 4,000, and I want to reach 10,000 by the end of the year, so you better start subscribing. And if you like the video, make sure you like and leave a comment down below. But without further ado, let's get into talk about what exactly the fat guy curse really is. As I said before, the fat person curse describes someone that started their career with being a funny fat person, but ended up losing the weight over time and has become, as a result, less funny. There are countless examples. I can go all day talking about them, but today I'm only going to talk about a couple different people that I feel like this describes exactly. And in the comments, you can talk about any of the other people that you think may also relate to this. Before we get into specifics though, I want to go over the 3 types of fat people humor that are very prevalent in today's society. We have physical comedy, self-deprecation, and humiliation. Now, you may be wondering, is that really it? Did it really boil down to those 3 things? Yes, it does. You'll see right here, I have a Venn diagram. And over time, we'll fill in this Venn diagram with all the different types of people. And you'll see exactly what I mean with this being the pinnacle of all comedy. So let's start off. For physical humor, it doesn't just embody just being a fat person, that being the only part of the humor. It also goes into depth about, stunts, or if you do any sort of gimmicks that have to do with your body. For example, if you're doing a cartwheel, if the whole point of it being funny is that you're fat, then it's not really a good joke, is it? It's just laughing at your own expense. I myself do this a lot in my streams. When I do my streams, I have all sorts of incentives like, oh, you should hit the gritty, or you should dance, you should try to do a backflip. And these things are funny, but inherently they are funny because you're fat. That's just the fact of the matter. So in movies, when you're doing stunts and stuff like Jonah Hill getting hit by a car, or Kevin James falling over because he's a fat guy, even though he's acing his police academy test. These things are funny inherently because look at the fat guy fall over. There are entire compilations on YouTube of fat people falling over. I know this because I watch them all the time. They're just funny. Not to say there's anything wrong with that kind of humor, but that's just saying when you're a fat person, it's kind of really easy to fall into just relying on that kind of humor, just falling over, or fat guy does something wacky and crazy that you wouldn't normally see a fat guy doing. I would describe physical comedy as someone that, uses their body as the joke, having their fucking your shirt off, saying, look at my big fat man titties, right? Now, there's a lot of people who have done that, but I feel like the best representation of the purest form of body humor in physical comedy are people in fat suits. Like, come on. Just think about it. The funniest fat people you think of right now, and at least for me, are Eddie Murphy and Tyler Perry in fat suits. Nutty Professor, Norbit, Medea, come on. And those are top tier fat people movies. The best part about it is you can laugh at them being fat without feeling bad that they're fat because it's a fat suit. And this is what I mean when I say it's the purest form of physical comedy, because you get all the benefits of them being fat without them actually being fat. It's the best of both worlds. Now, I want to put Tyler Perry and Eddie Murphy right here, right in the big bold section right here for physical comedy. And just remember that right here, Tyler Perry, Eddie Murphy, physical comedy. Now, I'm no stranger to doing physical comedy. It's one of my cornerstones of streaming. And I get it, I understand. Being fat's funny. Showing your big fat gut going, look at me, I'm fat. You know what I mean? That's a funny thing. But it comes to the point where you're not just laughing at just being fat. You go on to self-deprecation. We all know what that is. It's when you're making fun of yourself for the punchline, right? It's a little bit different from, physical comedy, because physical comedy is when you're using your body itself as the punchline. But with self-deprecation, it's more as your words. Comedians all the time do this, but I feel like fat people have it easier out because it's way less controversial to make fun of a fat person it is to make fun of, I don't know, like a gay person or any type of other demographic, right? Fat is objective. You can make fun of fat people. That's just a thing. You can objectively say you're fat. You're a fat fuck. You fat fucking idiot. And that's funny. I think that's funny, right? It's a fine line between, being a pity party and, making a slight jab at yourself. And it's an invitation for others to be like, oh, this guy's a fat fuck. That's funny. It breaks the ice in a sense where other people feel more comfortable with the idea of calling you a fat fucking loser because you did it yourself. You did it first. The best example of a self-deprecating comedian, I feel like, in all the industry would be Gabriel Iglesias. We all know him, we all love him. I'm not fat, I'm fluffy. That's his catchphrase, that's his whole shtick. He's the fat fluffy guy. And if he could say it, I could call him fat and fluffy. It's an endearment thing. It's not an insult anymore. It's funny, but it's still an endearment. You're a fluffy little guy, With self-deprecating people, I feel as though you toe the line because at a certain point, you get to the point where other people will begin to use you as the punchline. And when it's not you doing it, it toes the line between self-deprecation and... Now this is where things get a little bit tricky because it's a steep slope downhill when you start opening the gates up to humiliation. Because once you start, you can't stop. Humiliation is a very fast downfall. I'm positive that everyone watching this video has been humiliated at one point in their life. But when the shoe's on another foot, it's always funny to laugh at the person. Point and laugh, that's funny, right? In this type of humor, as I said, it's a slippery slope because at this point, you're not in control of the joke. People are laughing at you. It's the same with cringe. You may be saying, oh, well, I'm in control of the situation. I'm able to redirect the people laughing. But no, when you're the subject of humiliation and ridicule, the point is that they're laughing at you and you're no longer in control of it. The best example of this that I can see and that everyone's seen on the internet is Nikocado Avocado, someone who has, over the course of years, become the laughing stock of many communities because he's just gotten fatter. That's the whole point. He's just gotten fatter. Every video he makes now is just him eating until he can't eat anymore and then crying about it. You can make the argument that he's aware of what he's doing, but at the end of the day, it's not self-deprecation because they're not laughing with you, they're laughing at you. You're the subject of ridicule. People are making you as a person the joke. You've become so inhumanized. You become such a caricature of yourself because of the fatness. It has become your only defining trait. Oh, he's just that fat guy that eats. That's why I'm gonna put Nikocado as the humiliation baseline because he is so far gone. It's almost a reverse of the fat guy curse where Nikocado started off skinny, but because he started eating and he gained the weight, people started talking about it. I don't know if it was a factor in him eating more, but it got him more views. So with that, he got kind of typecast, quote unquote, on YouTube as the guy who eats. And when he eats more, people watch more. The drama continues with his husband, Orlin, and he continues to eat more and more, and that becomes his defining character trait. Now that we've gone over all the very basic bare minimums of the three pillars of fat comedy, let's go in a little bit more into depth. Let's talk about the mixing and the matching, right? There are a lot of different combinations here. There's all sorts of people that you can fill into these spaces, but I'm only gonna go over a couple, okay? It's just gonna be really quick, and we're gonna talk about some other stuff after this, okay? So in between here, I don't know where I'm pointing, but here we have in between body humor and self-deprecation, we have Jonah Hill. Now Jonah Hill, we all know him, we all love him. McLovin, super bad. He was in Wolf of Wall Street. You know, Jonah Hill's a funny guy, but when he gets skinny, he fell off, man. He fell off. We have the combination of physical comedy and self-deprecation. Self-deprecation and that's a good combination, right? It's a good little best of both worlds. You're able to do your own type of, you know, physical comedy. You can laugh at yourself, and you can also, you know, make it a joke at your own expense, right? That's all right. That's good. Then on the other hand, we have self-deprecation and humiliation, which I feel like is the worst possible place to be. You do not want to be here. You absolutely do not want to be here. People like this, you want to know who's here? You want to know who's here? Seth Rogen. Seth Rogen's there, dude. You don't want to be there. You don't want to be Seth Rogen. You do not want to be Seth Rogen. That is awful. You do not want to be Seth Rogen. You do not want to be in the middle of self-deprecation and humiliation. That is the worst place to be. Don't do it. Now here, right here, we got in between body humor and humiliation. And right here, this is going to be a controversial pick. I'm talking about twomad. Now you guys might think twomad's a funny guy, but I don't think so. Twomad is a little special case because in a closed system, I find him kind of funny. It's a little humorous, but when he's out in the real world, he's just humiliating himself. He's just making a fool out of himself, and I don't think that's funny. And I don't even think it's self-deprecation at that point. I think when you go so far into self-deprecating, you just humiliate yourself, and that's the part I didn't talk about. When you go so far into self-deprecating yourself, you immediately drop into the humiliation category, where people aren't laughing with you, they're laughing at you because you're so pathetic. Okay, so you don't want to be there either. You know, it's a certain type of comedy that some people do appreciate, but me personally, you gotta have a balance, right? You have to have a balance. And you know, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but these two, you don't want to be a Seth Rogen. You definitely don't want to be a twomad. Now I've saved the best for last. In between all three of these crucial pillars of fat people comedy, we have the king himself, Chris Farley. Chris Farley is a very interesting case because he can do all of it. He can make fun of himself while also being humiliated. He is great at physical comedy. Fat guy in a little coat. Fat guy in a little coat. You know, he works well with others. And it's a shame that he had to pass away so soon, but I think that might have contributed to him being as funny as he is. Now, I've talked a lot about the pillars of fat comedy. What does this have to do with the curse? The curse is, usually, if you're in one of these three, no matter what, you're in the fat guy comedy section, right? This whole Venn diagram, this is disconnected from the greater picture of comedy, I feel like. When you're in this, it's very hard to get out of. So when you do finally get out of it, you usually don't have any other comedy skills. You usually rely on one of these three things. And yeah, it can transcend. You can have physical comedy without being a fat guy. Just look at Jack Black or Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey isn't fat. He's never been fat. He's transcended just being a physical comedian. So is Jack Black, who is a fat guy. He's a little fat. He's a little chubby, but he's never been typecast as the fat guy. You know, maybe in Nacho Libre, but that wasn't just him being a fat guy. He was just a little kooky little dude, you know? My whole point in this is that in the grand scheme of things, a lot of fat comedians and actors, end up falling into the trap of being typecast or typecasting themselves and not growing out of just these three things that makes them funny. So when they do eventually lose the weight, they have no material. Just look at it like this. If Gabriel Iglesias wasn't as fat as he was, what would he talk about? The same thing goes for, you know, someone like Kevin James, who's built his career around just being the butt of the joke. Now, I'm not saying that these people aren't charismatic or funny in their own sense, but a lot of their humor does derive from just being the fat guy. This goes for any type of fat person. I know I've only talked about a slight amount of people, but I feel like this goes for everyone that goes into this list. You can put anyone into this Venn diagram, and I'll put a link to this Venn diagram in the description. You can make your own. Tweet them at me, actually. Twitter.com/ksonnytm. That's my Twitter. Go tweet at me. #FatGuyDiagram. I don't know. And just show me what people you think of that come to mind when you see this Venn diagram, because honestly, this is what I see. And at the end of the day, I think the whole reason why I made this video is because I don't want to be a fat guy forever. And I feel like I've been relying too heavily on stuff like this for my comedy. And I want to take away from this that I want to be more than just my fatness. I want to be someone that is funny on their own without being the butt of the joke. And if you're also fat out there and you're the fat guy of your group and you realize the only joke I have is that I'm fat, maybe look up some jokes that you can make without being the fat guy and grow a little bit with your comedy. Maybe someday we'll all not be fat. We'll all have a big laugh and think about this video and say, that Sonny guy was right. And if I convinced you of something, like the video, all right? I'll see you guys later.